All right, so let's take a look at building an example of using RESTful services. So as an example, we're going to use the upcoming assignment as an example of what we mean by creating these web services. So up to this point, we have been creating a client application that handles a list of widgets, right? Also a list of courses, modules, lessons, and whatnot. But let's focus on the widgets, which we just finished working for the last week or so. And so what we're going to try and do is that we want to be able to save, right, all your changes that you've been keeping track of in the client, right, on the React side, right? You can add a new widget, you can remove a widget, you can change the type, you can move it around. We would like to be able to save that somewhere, right? We can't save it on the client. So let's see where we can save it. So we're going to save it on the server. So we're going to start and create a widget RESTful service, and this widget RESTful service is going to allow us to, to create a new widget, to retrieve the list of widgets, to update a widget, delete a widget, move a widget around, and the structure of the architecture is going to look something like this. We're going to have a React container or a component on the client on the React side, using a React service client that we need to start working, although I believe the assignment did ask you to start working on that already. All right, but we're going to flesh that out more explicitly in this assignment, and using this client is going to use HTTP to talk to a Java REST controller. The Java REST controller is going to use a service to keep track of an array of widgets, and all posts. If we send a post, it's going to add to the array. If we send a delete, it's going to remove from the array. If we send a put, it's going to find an instance in the array and change it and update it. If we send a get, it's going to retrieve the list of widgets and go back to the client and then render all that on the client side, right? We're going to need a representation of the data on the server. For that, we're going to have a widget. We're going to create a Java class called the widget class that's going to have all the fields, every single field that all the types of widgets are going to need, right? We're going to have a name, an ID, a type, an order, text, source, size, width, height, and so on and so forth, right? So these are all the fields that every single widget needs, right? So the Java class will represent all the data that is coming from the client. On the Java side, we're going to have a widget service that's going to maintain an array, right, or list of widgets, and is going to allow us to push a new widget onto the array, or retrieve the entire list, the entire array of widgets, or retrieve a particular widget instance by ID, or update a brand new widget, or delete an existing widget from that array, right? And this array is going to live on the server, right? So that even if we refresh the client, we're not going to lose the data, because we can always go back to the server and retrieve the data from the server. Make sense? Eventually, obviously, this data doesn't have to live on the server. Eventually, we want it to live on a database, right? Stored in some MySQL database and whatnot. But we'll do that a little later. For now, we'll store this in the server. So the service on the client is going to be responsible for maintaining the state on the server side, and the controller, the widget controller, is going to keep track of. Is going to expose some URL endpoints, right? That are all going to start with API. They're all going to start with API. That's a good practice, right? So that we can distinguish URLs that are meant for data access, or URLs that are meant for static HTML or static CSS and whatnot. Yes, right. So we mean to be able to access data, JSON data. So post is going to allow us to create a brand new widget. Get widgets is going to allow us to retrieve all the widgets or find all the widgets, or get, and if you provide the ID of the widget that we want, is going to retrieve that one widget, and put is going to allow us to update or change a widget that already exists, right? And finally, delete is going to allow us to remove from the widget. The widget service, which you might have already gotten started on the client side, this asks you to either finish it or refactor it, so that it's going to use fetch, a JavaScript fetch, right, to talk to the server, right, to send, to post, to get, to put, to delete on the server. Okay? All right, excellent. And these are the URLs that we are suggesting, right? These are the patterns that we talked about here earlier, right? So your REST client is going to use these URLs for the widgets. All right. So having done that, let's see if we can start building this.